My name is Dr. John Callahan. I work for NOAA Co-ops. That's the Center for Oceanographic Products and Services. In particular, my job is as a climate scientist. I am a climatologist by training with a lot of background in meteorology and specifically on the impacts along the coasts. So that means coastal flooding from individual storms, but that also means long-term in terms of like sea level rise and frequency of storms and hurricanes, et cetera. The things and natural hazards that really focus on the coast. Primarily, it is caused by low precipitation. That is the main thing. And the Mississippi River Basin, as you would know, is relatively large. And there are many different sources that feed into the Mississippi. And most of them, if not all of them, are fed by precipitation flows and stream flows. But the precipitation has been decreased throughout much of the interior of the United States within that river basin. So the flows are very low in many areas of the Mississippi, and that manifests itself into low water levels. So in particular, we're talking about here, the low flows at just the southern part, in southern Louisiana, New Orleans area, but many areas and rivers feeding in are also experiencing issues with low flows. If there is low stream flow, like we were talking about in this case, from low precipitation, high temperatures, et cetera, then that saltwater push from the Gulf is pushing upward upstream. And right now that's winning because of the low precipitation flow. And we call that saltwater intrusion. So the saltwater is now intruding upstream to areas that are typically full of fresh water. So maybe that saltwater is getting into the groundwater. Maybe it's kind of going, let's say, perpendicular to the actual river flow. It's getting into the groundwater itself and sometimes seeping up. It's getting into wells that people use for irrigation, getting into wells that people use for drinking water, etc. So saltwater is intruding on places that are, again, not accustomed to saltwater, more accustomed to freshwater. And in this particular case, the saltwater is really pushing upstream rather far. But the Army Corps has come in and they build an underwater levee. And they call it, it's a sill, where it's really, if you could think about it, a wall of mud in the Mississippi River. It's about 64 miles upstream in the Mississippi River. And what that does is it literally physically stops the saltwater flow moving upstream. Saltwater is denser than freshwater. The freshwater flowing downstream is usually on top. The saltwater trying to push upstream from the Gulf of Mexico is towards the bottom. It's on the bottom of the Mississippi because it is denser. Saltier water is denser. So if you think about it, if you want to stop the upstream push, what you do is you go to the bottom of the Mississippi and you build a physical wall. It is a temporary fix. It's a wall of mud underneath the Mississippi, so it's going to deteriorate over time. If flows continue to decrease and precipitation stays low, then that salt water is going to eventually push over that sill as well. And from increasing temperatures, global warming, climate change, etc., we are seeing increasing temperatures, more evaporation, more water demand, more use of water upstream in many areas of the Mississippi Basin. So this kind of idea of the low flows and the drought, it is expected that we'll see this happening more frequently. I wanted to find a way that I can kind of combine kind of my interest in the natural environment of solving real world problems, but to use the quantitative skills that I learned in physics, mathematics, engineering. And it turned out that I guess now for the past 15 years or so, I've been working along the coastal areas. And that is a particular point where we see a lot of physical processes going on, large projects. So as there are issues at different parts of the coast, the United States, or the Great Lakes, et cetera, those are areas that I could start applying my efforts to solve those problems.